All right, welcome back from break. We're starting back up with Adopting Amazon's Culture of Innovation Workshop. So Paul Jurasin, got that right, Paul? All right, he tells me a lot of people mispronounce his last name, Jurasin. Director of New Programs for Information Technology Services and Digital Transformation Hub, CalPoly. He leads the development of new technology programs with a focus on fostering relationships with corporate and public sector partners. He established the world's first university-based innovation program powered by AWS. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
The CalPoly Digital Transformation Hub is dedicated to connecting public sector organizations with engaged students and world-class technology expertise. They're committed to supporting hands-on learning experiences for students and infuse Amazon leadership principles and innovation practices into their approach. Please help me welcome Paul. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. Thank you. Well, welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming to this session. It's one of the last sessions of the day. Pretty cool conference, though, huh? Yeah. So I heard some really good ideas out there, some great innovation going on in the nonprofit world. So what I want to talk about a little bit for the next few minutes, and I won't talk for very long because we really want to make this a hands-on workshop, is I'll talk a little bit about what the CalPoly Digital Transformation Hub is, and why it was formed, and where we are today. And then I'll hand it off to a couple of my colleagues who will work through the Working Backwards workshop with you guys to give you an idea of what that looks like. But just to give you an idea from the start, we're going to do this in about 35 minutes today, and usually it's about an 8-hour process. So we're going to be pretty fast. So I'll move ahead. So the CalPoly Digital Transformation Hub is part of the Amazon Cloud Innovation Center concept. We rebranded it as the CalPoly Digital Transformation Hub. It's a strategic partnership between Amazon Web Services and CalPoly. And what that means is Amazon's providing us with some personnel. So our team at CalPoly has part of our team is AWS people. We have 3 AWS folks on staff. There's a solutions architect, an innovation manager, and a program manager. And I'm the director. I work for CalPoly. We have another operations person working for us and an innovation coordinator. So that team works with public sector organizations to try to solve the biggest problems we can see out there in the public sector. And for us, the public sector means government, education, and nonprofits. So those are specifically the areas we work in. Our mission, as you see up on the screen, covers a few areas, and these are the areas that we really focus on as we work with our clients. What we want to be able to do is to lower costs, and when we say lower costs, we really mean providing better options for solving problems, right? We call the problems that the public sector has challenges, and public sector organizations will submit their challenges to us. And what we look for is ways we can lower the cost to really look at some of the innovation available to look at these challenges. We also want to expand technology options. So in the past, it was pretty expensive to try out different options in technology, right? When the cloud wasn't available, you had to go out and buy hardware, you had to buy some storage, you had to buy software. And if you tried out what you thought was going to be a good solution and it didn't work, you spent a whole bunch of money for something that didn't work, and you really couldn't afford to go try something else. With the cloud technologies that are out there, we can go out and test our options pretty quickly, find out if they work or not, and then if they do, we move on. If they don't, we try something else. So that's our goal and how we want to move the public sector forward. I'm going to skip the spur economic development for a second. I'll come back to that. The other thing we want to be able to do with the public sector is to really create replicable solutions to big problems. So, for example, if we were working on a challenge that a police organization had sent to us, we know there's thousands and thousands of law enforcement organizations around the country. If we can solve a problem for a law enforcement organization that we know exists in lots of other law enforcement organizations, what we do is we publish that solution in open source, so anybody else can then take the solution and implement it themselves anywhere in the country, or the world for that matter. So it's open source solutions that we're developing. Because we're a university, student experience is very important to us. So all of the challenges that we work on, we want to include students as much as we can. So the Digital Transformation Hub includes students who are working on senior projects. We bring in interns to work on challenges. We bring in faculty as well. And we look for ways that we can give our students real-world problem-solving opportunities using the latest innovation techniques and the latest technologies, so that when they graduate and they go out into the world, they already have some of this experience under their belt and they know what it's really like to work out in the real world. So I mentioned that our solutions that we produce are published in open source. So the Spur economic development piece of this works in a way where our Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, which is a student-based entrepreneurship group, can take the solutions that we come up with, and if they see a business opportunity with those solutions, they can take that solution and build a company around it, either an implementation services company, a software development company, various other ways we can do that. So just in a simple, short paragraph, what the CalPoly Digital Transformation Hub is an organization that applies proven innovation methodologies in combination with the deep subject matter expertise of the public sector, and that's where a lot of you guys come in, right? Because we know that the public sector in general has very deep subject matter expertise in lots of areas, whether it's healthcare or anti-human trafficking or law enforcement or whatever it may be. But they don't necessarily have the expertise in the innovation processes, and what we use are the actual innovation processes that Amazon uses to develop products. And the emerging technologies also is not the expertise area of many public sector organizations. So when we bring all three of those areas together, the deep subject matter expertise, the technology expertise, and the innovation expertise, we think we can come up with solutions to problems that maybe nobody would have thought of before. So that's really our goal. The circle with the other circles around it, those are just examples of some of the areas that we've worked on so far with the Digital Transformation Hub. We have anti-human trafficking we've worked on. We're working with smart cities. We have about 35 challenges that have been submitted to us that we're working on today. Okay, so the core of what we do in our Digital Transformation Hub follows this process that you see on the screen, which is our innovation flow. The innovation flow has 5 categories in it, and we take all of the organizations that we work with through these five areas. What we're going to do today, the middle area that you see is the define stage. That's the working backwards workshops that we do. So that's what our workshop is going to be today. Just very briefly, in the identify stage, we bring companies in, we talk to them about what their challenge is, make sure that it really fits what we want to be working on in the Digital Transformation Hub. Then we engage them by talking to them about how they can commit resources, make sure they have an executive sponsor, that they have a team that can work with us, and we can facilitate moving through the innovation process. Then we have the define stage, which is the solution innovation workshop, which you're going to know a lot more about in a minute. And then we do a prototyping stage. We stop after the prototyping phase at the Digital Transformation Hub. The realize phase, we hand over to the public sector organization to implement as they see fit, either through an RFP or their internal processes or whatever they might do to implement that problem. So what I'd like to do now is to get started in our workshop. I'd like to introduce a couple of colleagues of mine. One of them works with me every day at the Digital Transformation Hub, and the other, who I'll start with, is Ben Butler. Ben is responsible for I don't know if I'm going to get all this right, Ben, the innovation program and the accelerators program for AWS.
Great. Thank you very much, Paul, and good afternoon, and thank you very much for being here for this hands-on workshop. So I'm going to try to keep it short and sweet so we can get right to the workshop, but I just want to kind of set the stage a little bit. Have fun, collaborate, talk. If you're an Amazon staff, please help the folks that are here, the nonprofits, because you know a little bit about the working backwards process. But part of the working backwards process is really be customer obsessed And at the end of a workshop, we want to create a press release that answers 5 key questions, which Nick will go over, as well as creating FAQs and visualizations, because what we really want to do is begin with the end in mind and really come up with what is the customer experience I'm trying to drive to and why. And so that's the purpose of this workshop. And again, we're going from 8 hours into 35 minutes. So have fun with it. We're going to constrain you. We're going to say time. You may hear stopwatches go or alarms go off, but just enjoy it, and hopefully you'll get through it. So hopefully you all have come. I don't know if you had the pre-reading in the abstract. You had to have a really big idea that you needed to write about. So hopefully you got that ready. If not, just talk about the nonprofit or the organization you work on. So just really to learn about the mechanics of working backwards, let alone coming up with an innovation by 3 p.m. today. So I'm going to hand it off to Nick. And Nick works with Paul in residence at CalPoly with our strategic partnership with doing these innovation challenges.
Thank you, Ben. And thanks, Paul, for setting up the context and giving us the big picture. So typically, if we get to a point where we actually do an innovation workshop with a PubSec organization or institution, what we do is we create a 2-pizza team that's the right balance of subject matter expertise, as well as having the customer that you're trying to solve the problem for in the room as well and represented, so that way we can really understand and hear their voice, their pain points, their goals, that sort of thing. So in the beginning of the workshop, we do a really deep dive on who the customer is, what their needs, their goals are, their context. So that way you're kind of putting on that anthropology hat and trying to view the world from their perspective. From there, we get the room to ideate and come up with solutions, basically, to try to solve the core needs that we came up with during the customer empathy phase. And if we drive to consensus on an actual solution, then what we do is we drive to a draft PR FAQ, our press release frequently asked questions document, which is a key tool that we use here at Amazon to make sure that everybody in the company is obsessed about the customer's outcome and their needs, right? If we get to that point, then we move into the prototyping phase and do a mad sprint to actually build something to bring that idea to life based on the draft press release. So with that, I'm going to go through the 5 questions, and if anybody needs a pen, just let me know. And this will be interactive, right? So we'll have roughly 4 minutes for each different section. And if you have a question about something, just raise your hand, and Ben and I can come around and answer those as needed. So the first question is, who is the customer? And this is actually a much harder question than you might think. When we get into these workshops, it tends to be about 4 hours of discussion about who the customer really is. Who are you really trying to solve the problem for? And I would challenge you, if the first thing that jumps into your mind is an executive or a donor, I would really challenge you to think about pushing that out as far out to the edge of the problem as you possibly can. Who is actually feeling the pain every day? That's where you want to start. And you can always map back up the value proposition chain and pick the different customers that you want to try to work on the problem for. The second question is, what is the customer problem or opportunity? This is also a little bit harder than you might think. And there's a bit of an art to this. It's really about spelling out the facts and the behavior and the context of who that customer is and what the setting is that they're feeling this pain point. And you also want to frame it out so that way it's not so narrow that you're bringing in a solution, right? Because that's not innovation. That's kind of a predetermined solution that you're bringing through. But also not too wide, so that way you can actually wrap your arms around the problem. And the third question is, what is the most important customer benefit? This is actually somewhat difficult as well. Big ideas have a lot of big implications and big benefits. And even small ideas, you need to be able to communicate the clear value proposition, that one thing that really matters to the customer that delights them. With Alexa, for example, right? Alexa is a device that has huge implications. It's basically voice interaction with the internet. But how do you make that real and tangible to a customer and get it into their mind that it actually means something to them? And what the Alexa team settled on right out the gate was basically music on demand using your voice, right? It makes it clear. It makes that benefit and that value proposition clear. The fourth one is, how do you know what the customer needs or wants? And that's typically a balance, or always a balance here at Amazon, between quantitative and qualitative. Quantitative, obviously, we're familiar with data, right? That's the what is happening. But how do you know why? And that's where the anecdotes really come in. And we highly, highly value anecdotes here. And then the fifth question is, what does the customer experience look like? And that typically ends up being a storyboard. It could be some sort of mock-up, a UI, UX mock-up, but the idea is that you're bringing the idea to life in a lean way with kind of low energy and low investment, low cost before you actually build anything. So you avoid the mistake of building something you think the customer really needs just to find out that they don't actually want to adopt it. Okay, so with that, we're doing pretty good on time. So we're going to answer the first question. Who is the customer? This is where we start working backwards. So I don't know if you have kind of fellow associates here, but if you'd like to work in groups, you certainly can, or people next to you. But what I'd like you to do is identify at least 5 defining characteristics of who the customer is. And essentially what this is a persona. If anybody's had experience with that, it's things like what's their name, what's their age, what's their role, what's the context of their life, where are they going, what are they trying to do, what matters to them, what are they passionate about, that sort of stuff. You want to make this customer real in your mind so you can start to think about who they are and what they actually need from their perspective. Okay.
So we have about 5 minutes for that.
Okay, so let's do 4 minutes on that, and then I'll try to get somebody to volunteer to share out what that looks like for them.
Do you need a pen?
Thank you.
Um, 236 and then writing down. They're only doing one right now, right?
One customer persona.
Yeah, I mean they're just doing number 1. They're not doing number 2.
A lot of them will we skip to the second one, but we'll address it.
I can actually, if you want, I can end it, and I'll start number 2, and then you can do the crazy ones. Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, then we can alternate over. Just tell me when we should, because we want to do. That's what. Oh, and
Get down to the fundamental emotional
yeah.
and then bounce back up from there.
You actually want to ask them?
No, I mean, it's just a
Oh, just tell them.
it's a
Yeah.
mental for them
No.
when they're trying to come up
I'll
with
bring it up. Yeah, when we do number 2. ROE, not a 2.
So we'll do at 36. I'll queue up a volunteer to talk about it.
Okay.
And then 37, we'll move on.
37 now. Okay. All right. I'll say let's start with number 2.
You gonna do 30 more seconds, guys? About 30 more seconds.
And we've got about 30 more seconds. If you could finalize who your customer is, and the details of their life.
I'll volunteer.
All right, 10 seconds. Yeah. Okay, do we have a volunteer?
Does anyone want to share their customer with the group? We'll just do one in the interest of time. Okay, thanks. I'll come over here.
Hi, I'm Christy Kaufman. I lead the CODA Support Foundation. We're a veteran support nonprofit. We recently developed a technology platform called Patriot Link, and it's a cloud-based, of course on AWS, resource navigation platform. Our customer that we developed this for, even though our end beneficiary is the veteran and the family members, the customer really is the service provider or the professional or the volunteer that is engaged in helping them find resources. So that's where I start. It's a little hard because the end beneficiary is actually the veteran, but the customer for the platform is the professional or the provider.
There any aspects or attributes about that person that that come to mind? Volunteers, busy, like pains, influences, tasks, goals, anything that kind of personifies that particular volunteer.
Yeah, frustration, right? So we did a market scan of 150 community-based organizations and asked them 2 questions. The first one was, how are you finding resources for your veterans you know they need that you don't have? And 93% said they were Googling. And the second question was, if you had a platform by which you could efficiently and effectively find these resources, would you spend 4 to 7 minutes using it? Like 98% said yes.
Okay. Awesome, great. All right, so we should start with number 2 now. Thank you very much, I appreciate it. So what we're going to do next is we're going to spend about 5 minutes, write down 2 to 3 wants or needs your customers may have, and try to prevent writing solutions. So solutions are symptoms of more fundamental need. So remember, needs are fundamental and related to a customer's life and context. They're not features, but rather pain points you're trying to address. So let's take another 5 minutes and we'll call time on that.
Yep. Oh. Nick, 2 more minutes? Okay, 1 more minute.
All right, let's cut it off here. Can we get another volunteer to share their 2 to 3 wants or needs from their customers? I'm sure you have customers with lots of wants or needs. Okay, good, thank you.
Hi, so Michaela, Boy Scouts of America. Quick know of who my customer is. So we have councils or franchises, chapters, however you want to say them, across the country. But the one that I targeted were the ones in the more rural areas where their income level is, at or below poverty. And the wants or the needs that the council has to serve their community is the same access or status as a larger council where they have more available technology. They also want to have more engaged volunteers. So when your population income level is pretty low, they're constantly having to work, so they don't have time to dedicate to the community. And then they also would want qualified or access to qualified or knowledgeable staff. So your employee pool, dwindles down a little bit in the more rural areas.
Great. Thank you very much. And I'm going to segue to Nick. Usually during these working backwards workshops in the beginning, it's fun to ideate on solutions and come up with, or actually use solutions as answers to these. And we always push back and say, hold on, let's focus on the problem. But now you'll get to have fun. So we're going to do a little activity where you can actually come up with as many crazy ideas as you can fit in 8 minutes. So Nick, why don't you take it from here?
Alrighty, so this exercise is called Crazy Eights. It's not unique to Amazon necessarily. It is a pretty good tool, I think, for ideating in a group especially. So the idea is we're going to give you 8 minutes, and you're going to try to come up with one idea every minute on average, right? You can come up with a lot more ideas if you can get there. But come up with crazy ideas, big ideas, really pragmatic ideas, an idea that you might think you could actually accomplish in 1 year. And then when we're done with that, we'll do a quick share out, and you're going to identify the best idea that you like the most, and we'll move into the next section. Okay, so no pressure here, but I'm going to start an alarm clock. All right, so here we go. Crazy Eights begins. 1 minute, and I'll count off every minute as we go. And by the way, if we have any artists in the crowd, or even non-artists, feel free to draw. And don't be afraid of stick figures. And one last point, apologies. You want to think about that core need that you identified when you're coming up with these solutions. That's what you're ideating towards.
Hey, second idea.
Five total. Yeah. Do you need a pen? Sure. All right, we're at 2 minutes.
Third idea. Start drawing.
All right, 3 minutes, fourth idea, and just remember, this is not an exam. Have fun, draw doodles, come up with big ideas, work off of other ideas that you came up with. If you start slowing down, start thinking outside the box. Yeah. Yeah. All right, that's number 6. Get on your 6th idea.
Oh, I think it's 5.
Is it?
5 and 6. More constraints.
That's right. Funny thing is, I always get it wrong.
You know what?
Yeah, it's good. So this is number 6. What minute are we at? What minute are we at?
All right, your 6th idea, your real 6th idea. If you're on your 7th one, go for it. You're,
Yeah,
you're
keep
raising the bar there.
If you're slowing down, maybe think about what another industry might do, right? Uber, something as a service, use analogs, use industry trends.
You're famous.
Yeah, we're technically on 6, but if you got a 7th idea, just get ahead. Yeah, we're having fun here. Okay,
Right.
that's your 7th. The ideas may be a little bit harder to come by, but the constraints actually produce creativity because
That's right.
yeah, usually the first idea is the one you have already had in your head already. So the 7th or 8th are the ones you're really stretching for.
Denk, you should tell them about your, when we do a real workshop, what Nick will do is, after people get that first idea or two out there, those are usually the easy ones, and he tells them to throw them away. He says, rip them up and throw them away.
It's because Post-it notes are cheap.
Yeah, one more. This last one. I'll Okay, one last idea if you have it, or start doodling. We just incorporated VR and AR. Nice.
All right, time's up, everybody.
Pencils up.
Okay, raise your hand if you got 8.
Nice.
Raise your hand if you got more than 8. All
Great,
right.
right?
Raise your hand if you got 4.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
We're missing some hands here, everybody. Okay. Okay. One more. Okay. So let's take 1 minute and maybe talk to your neighbor and describe your best idea to them.
And if you don't have a neighbor, I'll come by and listen. It's okay. We'll go a little. We have finish this last one. Just do 253, and you can just wait 5 minutes here and the last 2 minutes. You know, as a call to action, we won't actually have to figure this all out. But give 15 seconds. Is that when you start?
No, it seemed like they would only get like 45 seconds.
Oh, I thought you saw.
All right, 15 seconds. All righty. There's a lot of chatter out there. Does everybody feel good about their idea? Still going. Hello, innovators. Innovators. Hello. Seems like we've got some robust discussion. That must mean that there's some really good ideas out there. All right, so let's move on into the next phase. Okay, so in 3 sentences or less, this is your target, maybe a small paragraph. I want you to articulate the big idea. 3
It's
sentences
page
or less.
6.
And in that articulation, tell me who the customer is, tell me what that core need is, and why they care about this solution. We'll give you 2 minutes to do that. Okay, 30 more seconds. Sorry to rush you.
You can do it. I mean, actually, there's Amazon videos called the world's biggest working backwards workshops. Where it's like 35 It's an Amazon internal, but the person's on stage running through it. I saw it a couple years. I'll send you a link. But they had all their information, all the information streamlined into 1 hour. They cut.
Alrighty, let's tidy up that paragraph. We'll move on to the next concept, which might actually be quite difficult. What is the core benefit to the customer for this solution? The most important customer benefit that you're solving with your new idea. We'll give you 2 minutes for that one.
If your customer read that press release that we talked about, what would compel them to try or buy your product or service? What is that core feature?
All right, 30 more seconds. Okay, so let's stop. Let's do a quick product fit check. Go back to page 3. Item number 2. You wrote down 2 to 3 core needs or wants for your customer. Did that match with what the solution is solving for? Anybody? Is there a match? Did anybody not match? All right, a very lively crowd. Okay, so let's do a quick share out. Does anybody want to volunteer to share out your paragraph of your big idea? Anybody?
This group was pretty engaged. Do you want to share your idea? Yeah, that was great. Saw them typing in the laptop and everything. So.
Only because we're being required to. So our ideal sort of audience is a university student who's overwhelmed by the multiplicity of ideas, choices, and discovering their own sense of meaning in life. And so that pain point leads to paralyzation and confusion. And so we propose creating a tool where they can use natural language to present their ethical dilemma or lifestyle choice, and then learn how an ideal representative from 4 to 6 worldviews would resolve that tension for them. And so it would give them quick, credible access to answers from a divergent set of traditions. And we hope that would build empathy and understanding across the pluralistic world we live in.
All right, so what's the core benefit?
So you can do it in 35 minutes.
Yeah. There you go. What's the core benefit?
Save time and energy in resolving the many choices you have.
Thank you, that was great.
Is saving time the core benefit, or actually making that student feel more relevant in the world, or the choice that they actually made of their lifestyle or who they are? That's part of it. It's part of another thing we don't have time to do, but in Amazonian culture, we'll ask 5 whys. Why is saving time the most important? And then you come up with an answer. And then now, why is that the answer? And you kind of drill down. It's root cause analysis. But that's just kind of something that we do. We won't have enough time here to do, but that's just something to think about when you come up with the core benefit. Why is that the core benefit?
Do that in the back.
Okay, great. Awesome.
Awesome. So the typical we're out of time now, but typical next steps would be we would outline the press release. That would include the first thing you do is you write the customer quote. Again, it's kind of like that big idea paragraph, but it's stated in the customer's own context and perspective. This is the solution, this is why I care. The second piece would be the idea summary, so a lot like that kind of big idea articulation. The third one is just a one-sentence headline describing it concisely, right? It's like your 15-second elevator pitch. And then we'd put a date on it to make it a little bit real, right? We're going to try to actually develop this thing by this date. And then 7 days later, you'd have a draft press release that was fully fleshed out, had leader quotes, had customer quotes, described the approach, or described the problem, described the approach and solution, and why it matters to the customer. And then we also help you to develop an FAQ. So we have a customer FAQ and a stakeholder FAQ, and it's basically an operational document. Any question that anybody would ask you about this innovation, you have to come up with that in advance and answer it in advance. And in theory, you take all this and you try to get sponsorship to scale up your innovation. So that's what we do at the DX Hub. And I highly encourage you to reach out to Paul Jurasin with CalPoly, the director of the DX Hub.
Oh, it's not, there it is.
If you'd like to submit an application to do a digital innovation engagement with us, we'd love that. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want, just one other quick note. These are living documents. And when you think of Amazon Echo or Amazon Web Services, Kindle, Prime, they all started with doing the working backwards process. So there's a million and one ways to innovate. This is our way that we've decided to innovate that's been very successful for us. And we love to share it with our customers so they can see how it can work in their context. And our engagement with CalPoly is actually creating a real mechanism to be able to do that with our customers. So we look forward to seeing if any of these make it into email format to send to Paul. Thank you so much, appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody, for coming. I'll be up here for a while or off to the side for a while, so if anybody has any questions, come on up.